So I think it goes without saying in recent years, volatility is sort of becoming the norm, and how to lead through that is the challenge that we're going to talk about today. So Jonathan, how do we do that?
Yeah, great question. And probably a good place to start is actually not the current context, but just thinking, about leadership broadly. And in many ways, leadership is really hard right now, but it's actually been hard for a long time.
Sure.
And leadership is almost definitionally a very challenging task. And the way we define leadership at AIR is it's actualizing a clear and compelling vision through others. There's really 4 tasks. There's a vision. It has to be clear. So you got to be communicating really clear.
Sure.
Compelling. I got to be inspirational. I got to get people motivated and rallying around this vision. And then there's the art of how do I get it done through others, right? Bad leaders might be great at the vision, or might even be great at clear and compelling vision, but they run with it and they look behind and they see all their people 200 miles back.
Right.
So based on that definition, leadership is a challenge, and it is incredibly consumptive of psychological, cognitive, emotional, and physical energy.
Sure.
So let's just call a spade. Leadership is hard. It's always been hard. From Jesus and Moses to Kennedy to now, right?
Right.
And it will always be hard. The thing about leadership, though, that on a relative basis you could argue was a little bit easier than it is now, is you could set that clear and compelling vision and kind of put that stake in the ground, and then you can go into a strategy session with your team, create a 3-year, a 5-year, a 10-year roadmap to achieve that milestone and all the sub milestones along that roadmap. And then you can present that to the board, get buy-in, put it in a paper, put it in your annual report, and get everybody rallied around it, and just go.
And even in normal times, seems like that was a lot.
Even that is a lot. That's
right.
a lot. That's not simple. That's it's not checkers, it's chess.
Right.
But once you set it, you sure, things happen. A company might have some headwinds. There might be a positive moment, a negative moment, a small crisis here, a fire here, a huge win here. But nevertheless, the change that occurs over that 3 to 5 years tended to be more incremental in nature than disruptive or highly disruptive. So here we are in 2025, and we have a fair amount of convergent change, right? So we have a lot of social unrest. We have a lot of political polarization and unrest. We have a very complex, contradictory economic environment. And you take all of that and then layer in the incredible pace of innovation through AI and the AI revolution that we're all experiencing. And that checkers that went to chess is now becoming some form of I don't know what the metaphor is. Some three-dimensional or four-dimensional metaverse human chess with robots coming at you.
Right.
So the amount of things that a leader has in their the amount of inputs and variables that are coming at any given leader today that they have to incorporate into their calculus in their decision making is exponentially greater than it's ever been, which is why a lot of leaders, frankly, are kind of saying, "This isn't as glamorous as I thought it was. I really wanted this CEO role, and oh my God, this is actually really hard, and doing 14, 15-hour days every day and going around the world, and
it feels like spinning your wheels because the things you're describing are it's a constant, perpetual change with the time frames faster. It's just faster, right?
Look, since the computer came out, right? then we have the internet revolution, and then we have all of a sudden the computer and the internet in our pocket, and then on our wrist.
Yep.
And so all of that has created lots of opportunity and change. So if you think about like if you mapped out information over time, it's a hockey stick, right? The amount of information that's produced and the amount of information that we consume. But we're in this new phase now with AI where whatever was exponentially greater through the computer, internet, and mobile revolution is now been like exponentially impacted. And so it's true that the pace of change has increased and the amount of change has increased. But now I think what we're seeing is that there's just a compression in the frequency, and it's so compressed, right? I don't know if do you ever sign up for any of these AI newsletters?
Of course. And
yeah, it's like
perpetually signing up. I think it's the
2 years ago, it'd be like, oh my God, like a new LLM came out, like, wow. And then maybe a few months later, it's like, and there's like version 2.1 now.
Right.
And you can like make pictures. And it's like, oh, wow, like I can get this thing to draw a cartoon of me, and it kind of looks really off,
weird,
but it's kind of cool that it did that. And I can have it make a haiku and an apology letter to my mom, right? Now, it's basically on a daily basis. You're seeing different models come out, different versions come out, different, not incremental, like really huge innovation in the AI space. And all these things have like massive implication to life, work, how we exist on this planet, and we haven't even caught up. If the innovation stopped today, and this is something that Ethan Mollick says, like if it's just stopped today, it would take like 10 years to just digest and incorporate this innovation into our life to really extract the benefits.
Well, I think that's a great point to transition to. We've got these leaders, and we can think empathetically about the position that they're in, right? It was already hard. And now it seems like even if you were caught up, you're not, because you're 10 years behind, as you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And so what do you do, right? What do you do as a leader? You're in that role. Is there one main thing you would tell people, 2, 3 things that you would say, hey, here's the first thing I would do, the second thing I would do, the third thing I would do. Are there any constants, right? Yeah. That we can find in leadership? It's
a great question. So, I think first and foremost, there needs to be like a level setting or acknowledgement that like we are fundamentally not in, like it's not 2019 anymore, or even 22 or 23, like COVID. Let's not even go there.
That was a whole different
bonkers, right? Like we are now in a new age where change is constant. It's not, incremental. It's not high frequency. It's very fluid and constant. And so we need to like understand the water that we're like swimming in, mm-hmm. like the environment. And leaders need to like understand that. And in understanding that, then appreciate just how important it is to have the energy reservoirs required to navigate in that context. And what I mean by that specifically is like resilience, self-care, self-management. It's the whole, like put your seatbelt on first, or your oxygen mask on first.
Before helping others, right?
And, so leaders who don't appreciate the context and start with putting their oxygen mask on first, despite their best intentions and crazy smarts and incredible strategies, they'll flame out, right? They're just going to get
So you're just personally,
totally
you're getting
up.
gassed out, and that's what you're talking about, is just, make sure you don't burn out. Otherwise you can't lead.
Make sure you don't burn out. And that means being proactive. It means like set gym in your schedule, do things like breathing, yoga, whatever is required to regulate yourself. Like we are animals. Like we react to fear and stress and excitement and all those chemicals swishing around. They essentially dysregulate us. So we have to find ways to stay centered when the environment is constantly destabilized underneath our feet.
I'm imagining like a CEO's hair on fire right now and just going like, you want me to do yoga right now? That's your plan? But like, I think it makes so much sense.
Whatever works for you.
Right.
Breathing, yoga, therapy, all the above. The point here is you got to invest in yourself. And because we do not have infinite energy, we have gas tanks, and those gas tanks need to be regularly filled. So that's that's advice number one. It's table stakes to be a leader today. And by the way, if you're not doing that as a leader, your people probably aren't doing that either. Because one thing we know about leadership is that you're like the number one model for everybody around. They're all looking up to the leader and saying, that's what we should be doing. And we're going to emulate that behavior, those values. So if that leader is exhibiting the right behaviors and values, then the people tend to map to that.
Right. It's almost like a social emotional trickle down effect, where if you're not doing self-care,
it's going to be mirrored by your people. And then you'll have a culture that is vulnerable to burnout. And that's not great at a human level, obviously. But it's certainly not great from a productivity and business standpoint as well. So I think self-care and investing in self is really, really important.
Before we move on to the next topic, I want to ask you, because you mentioned resilience and you mentioned those things. I imagine there's a lot of folks, and if you're not familiar, if folks are not familiar with growth mindset theory and those types of things, that they kind of feel like, well, you're either a resilient or you aren't, right? And so do you run into that where leaders sort of question like, okay, how am I going to develop my resilience? Yeah, I can take breaks, right? I'll take but like, is there other ways to bolster your resilience? Is I guess the question, and build that as like a skill.
And build as a skill, yeah. I mean, I think that it's acknowledging that in the end of the day, we're fundamentally human, imperfect. And therefore, we need to we're not superheroes,
right?
Even though we want to be, we're not. And so we need to preserve our energy. We need to set boundaries, and we need to do things that are restorative. So okay, you don't want to do yoga, don't do yoga. Go to a baseball game though. If that does it, go check out your hockey card collection.
Right.
Go to but do something. Or else you're just going to get massacred by this fire hose of change.
I think that's a great piece of advice. And so what else would you say to leaders that are sort of navigating this level of uncertainty?
So in addition to the self-management domain and investing in yourself and making sure that you've got the right amount of gas in the tank, this is a time where it's really tempting to be reactive and always action-oriented and just doing. And when we go into that mindset and that behavioral pattern, we do not leave ourselves the white space needed for strategic thinking and for being curious. And so the one of the biggest risks of moving at the pace we're moving, and being in like a go, always on mode, is that we're not pausing to think. And we find ourselves then very much in the business rather than on the business.
Right.
That's a classical challenge. Anybody who's a business owner, entrepreneur, can relate to that challenge, but it's especially acute right now. And so, at AIR, we're encouraging leaders really take that time to be strategic, If you need a sounding board, an executive coach to really create structure around that, do that. If you have a board, use that board to really engage in strategic thinking. Because again, going back to that, like, we're not playing checkers, we're not even playing chess, we're playing like 4-dimensional zombie chess, like, you know.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of variables.
With no gravity, in space, moving and all. Yeah.
And the decisions, the small ones and especially the big ones, are all very consequential right now. So we need to take out that time. And it's the easiest thing to say, oh, I'll get to it next week, or, you know, but to build in that time.
So how do you know you need it? Like, I think that, you know, there has to be a level of self-awareness, right? That whole working on your business versus in your business. We hear it all the time. We talk about it all the time. Mm-hmm. But I imagine so many people that walk around saying that still fall into that pitfall for a variety of different reasons of working in the business instead of, you know, allocating enough time to working on it and being strategic. And there could be this, you know, awareness bandwidth, you know, issue, or like, you're not even realizing this is a problem right now. So if I'm listening to this right now and maybe I'm going, this is a very nice podcast, but this doesn't apply to me, right? Is there some sort of, I don't know, standard or way to look at this to go, hey, I might be missing the plot, that you've seen over and over again with leaders, or that you would recommend?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think that people can sometimes trick themselves into thinking that they're being strategic, right, but all within a very reactive, like, frame. And so, like, I think that you're not being strategic when it feels viscerally like you just feel like you're on a treadmill. Like,
got it.
You're the output and the amount of energy expended is not returning more than what's expended.
I love that. That's like an ROI on your time spent, right? Like, if you are, or your energy, right? Yeah. So if your energy, look, we've all go through those days, those weeks where you just feel like you're on the hamster wheel, and you know, you've overbooked meetings, you've got, you know, a fire you're putting out on that. But if you are, you know, this is a marathon, right? And if you're constantly sprinting, there's probably, to your point, there's probably a problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, it's not about, this isn't a work hard,
work smart thing, right?
This is about seeing a return. Like, you can work really hard and stay in the same place. And be vulnerable to making the same errors.
Right.
You want to see growth, and you're not going to see growth unless you're fundamentally thinking strategically and making strategic decisions. Which brings me to the final.
Sure.
I mean, there's a whole lot of things to talk about in leading through uncertainty, but the final thing I would share is what we think of as a leadership attribute. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of leadership skills. In fact, at AIR, we have 3 main big buckets: leading self, leading others, leading the organization. Then there's 12 dimensions under those 3 buckets. And then there's 45 leadership skills, right? So strategic thinking is actually a leadership skill. Like, I could teach you how to do it. You can become better at that. We can measure that skill.
Right.
But then there's attributes which are like much deeper. It takes a lot longer to develop and cultivate. And the attribute that is really important right now, it's always been important, again, for leadership, but really important right now, is courage, right? The courage to make tough calls, the courage to be disruptive, to get outside of your comfort zone, because what worked up until now will not be working when we have robots joining us at the conference table for a board meeting. When
you might just need to be courageous to be at that board meeting.
That's a solid point.
If you've seen like half of the movies made in the 80s and 90s, that's
if you've seen the Terminator series, then you will need some courage.
I'm going to skip that meeting. That's I'll take it remote. That's fine.
But we need to give ourselves permission to think like outside of the box and to think boldly, but then not just have an interesting vision and picture of what could be, but to actually take those steps. And
Right.
that requires a lot of courage.
And I think that courage is something that's generally associated with being an entrepreneur, just inherent. Like if you're going to take that role, you must be courageous, right? But there is clearly a deeper level.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a higher sort of like risk tolerance for most entrepreneurs that I know, and I can relate to that. But that still doesn't necessarily translate to doing something that just is right, but that goes against every like comfort zone
Right.
in your body and system.
And it's that level of courage at those levels, right? Because there's this sort of macro level of courage, like I'm going to take these risks, right? But sometimes the risk, as it's felt by others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or in comparison to others, it's a different kind of courage than, when I was talking to somebody earlier that was talking about, the truth when you're brushing your teeth. The only time you're telling yourself the truth is when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, and then that moment when you're looking in the mirror, right? And so,
Love that.
That moment, it's a different level of courage for everybody, right? Because, you have your different comforts and different things you're relying on, and being willing to step past that, right?
Yep.
That is, I want to just touch back on one thing before we wrap here. And, and it was just like a small point that you had made that I think would be interesting to pull is metrics. So you had said that these behaviors, right, and these attributes, if I'm using the right terminology there.
Yeah. Attributes harder to measure.
Right,
Behaviors, it's hard for me to measure your courage. But I can measure your executive presence or your degree of influence.
I got worried that this was going to be like Ellen and somebody was going to jump out behind me, and it was he didn't even flinch. Very courageous. But a 7 out of 10 on courageous. No, that's a great point. But for leaders listening to this, what does that look like? Like paint a small picture so that if we're working with Air, and let's say I'm working with an executive coach, and paint the picture of what it looks like as I'm measuring the growth that I might be seeing over a period of time. Like, maybe there's a case study, anecdote, a story you could share that'll help me sort of connect with that, because I think that would be really valuable for folks that, look, you feel like you're a fish out of water, hearing all these things. It's like, oh my gosh, well, why am I being a CEO anymore? This is going to be too hard.
Yeah.
But that's not the message here. The message is that these things are hard, but there are ways to hone and sharpen and persevere.
Yeah, I mean, this change is what we do, right? Our purpose at AIR is helping leaders navigate change and shape a better future. That navigation is change in the environment, but also change within, right? And we do that in all sorts of ways. In executive coaching, which is like our core bread and butter service, we do a very thorough assessment at the front end of whoever we're working with, to understand, all right, like first of all, like what's the topography look like here? Like what do we? But then within this individual who is unique and special, what are the incredible strengths that stand out, and what are some of the opportunities or weaknesses that might be getting in the way of the person's success? So we do that thorough assessment, and then we take that data, we make deep meaning of that, and move it into essentially a strategic action plan. Like, so we decide, all right, these are the 3 things we want to work on. And sometimes those things are like hard to articulate in a measurable way, like needs more like influence, needs better buy-in of senior stakeholders. But at let's say that's the goal. We then go to actions that are measurable against that goal.
Got it.
And that's what's on the plan itself. So I might say, all right, we need to work on our communication, because even though you're working really hard and you're producing a lot and you're doing great work, nobody knows what you're doing. And it's creating coordination issues, because guess what, man? Even though you're really awesome and important, you're one of 8 different parts of a process.
Right.
And if you don't communicate effectively, it's going to gum things up at stage 5 and 6 down here, right? So we would then understand that problem, understand the root cause of that problem, but then set some targets. Like, okay, how are we going to, what does great communication look like 6 months from now? Like, you walking into work, what does awesome look like? Okay, it looks like I'm checking in, I'm answering my emails in a responsive way, and I'm providing like an update at the end of the day of the things I've done, and I'm answering like my Slack in a timely way. Okay, great. We've set a target, and now we work towards doing that, and we get observational feedback, which is essentially the way we're able to monitor and determine ultimately whether change has occurred or not. And you'd be surprised, just the act of articulating that high-level goal and forcing yourself to think through what those actions are and then saying, I commit to that, that alone is probably 60% of the work. Just that alone. That other 40% is just reps. It's going to the gym. Nobody likes going to the gym. I don't like going to the gym. But you do it.
But you do it.
And you get stronger.
And it takes that consistency, right? It's making the decision up front, setting a goal, setting a plan, right? And maybe picking an avenue in the gym of what types of workouts you want to do, which may be based first on what kind of fitness goals you have, right? So those fitness goals, then here's the workout I'm going to do. And then let's go put in the reps over time. I think that's a great point. I think it's approachable for folks that may be overwhelmed with their leadership responsibilities. And then also, well, how is this even an avenue to be repaired? I think sometimes when you're in that hamster wheel, you can't see the way out. And I think that, Jonathan, I think it's super helpful, the information that you shared today. I think those are actionable steps that people can take right away to at least start thinking about how to play, I think it was zombie 4-dimensional gravity chess
in the metaverse.
In the metaverse, thank you. That was the one thing that I feel like I want to do, like a I Am Iron Man. That's the last. Jonathan, thank you so much. And to anybody who is looking for more information, visit AIR.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John.